Welcome back to GBN America. I'm particularly pleased today of all days to welcome Colonel Daniel Davis to the discussion to ask about the Tucker Carlson interview with President Vladimir Putin. Colonel Davis, is Tucker Carlson a useful idiot to Putin in the way that Stalin had useful idiots in the 1930s?
Well, certainly a lot of people are going to view it that way. There's no doubt about that because, Putin has not given interviews to anybody else. And he's certainly seen that over time he thinks that he has a friendly voice with Tucker Carlson. But a lot of other people view it quite differently, that they're saying, OK, here's someone that could be somewhat close to a balanced voice, and we'll see based on what kind of questions he actually asks Putin as to whether they're hard or softball questions. I think that'll determine it. But both sides definitely want to try to get something out of it, and Putin will do everything he can to make his side look as good as possible.
I mean, the reason I refer to useful idiots is that a lot of people trooped off to the then Soviet Union in the 1930s and said what a good man Stalin was, when in fact he was killing people and he was running a totalitarian regime. We know that Putin kills people. We know that people mysteriously fall from windows who oppose Putin. And we know that he doesn't like democracy. So why on earth should Tucker Carlson go and interview him?
Well, because he wants to hear from the horse's mouth what his views are and what he thinks about different things. And I think that it's actually very important to be able to hear someone not just giving their own sound bites, because Putin, his famous New Year's Day or Christmas Day press conference where he rattled on for like 4 hours saying what he wanted. Well, at least now people can see with someone asking a question of him from a different perspective, and we'll see what he has to say. But I think it's important to be able to hear both from the Ukrainian people, the Russian leaders, the American leaders, Great Britain. We want to hear from all of them so that people get to make their own choice. And I think that's what's different about this, is that people get a chance to listen, and then whether Putin's trying to use them to say what he wants or not, they can make their own mind up. But I like the chance to get to hear from it myself.
But do you really want to hear from your enemy who is justifying invading a friendly country? Aren't we in a proxy war with Russia? Isn't it like going off to interview the leaders of Hamas and to give them a favourable option to get their message across?
Well, it's not so much a favorable option as it is an honest option to hear what they have to say. Whether you can hate what they say, but then you're going to know what they're talking about. As a military man and somebody who's deployed into combat zones 4 times in my career, I think I heartily agree with Sun Tzu that says, if you know your enemy and you know yourself, then you need not fear the outcome of any battle. And if you never listen to your enemy, you don't know what they're thinking. And there could be some clues in there for people who are paying attention to see maybe there's a way to find a negotiated settlement, because everyone in the West likes to characterize Putin for, being the evil person and all this. And so they never listen to him, maybe losing an opportunity to possibly get this war to come to an end if you understand what he actually thinks about things. I think it's important.
But as a military man, don't you actually want to win rather than to make your enemy seem potentially more sympathetic as a master of the dark arts of propaganda?
Well, yes, as a military man, absolutely. I want to win everything that I can. But in this particular case, as a military man, I can just tell you categorically, there is no path to a Ukrainian military victory. And to continue going down that path, I think is actually antithetical to Western interests, to Ukraine interests. And to blindly go down that path and say we're going to keep trying anyway is going to get more Ukrainians killed. I think it's much wiser to say militarily what is actually possible and what's not, and then let's have policies based on the reality.
But isn't that showing incredible weakness for the West that we can be defeated by Russia? Because Ukraine is acting as a proxy for the West, whether we like it or not.
Yeah. Whether we like it or not, we do not have the capacity to win unless NATO gets physically involved with their armies and we go to war with Russia, which of course would be catastrophic and probably lead to nuclear war. That outcome is already ordained. And I know a lot of people don't want to hear that. They don't like to hear it. But again, an unemotional and military assessment of the situation, Ukraine cannot win. And to continue to ignore that is going to make it worse for Ukraine, and an eventual settlement will be worse for them the longer it goes. That's the hard reality.
But isn't it important that we provide the armaments to Ukraine. There's this bill stuck in Congress that would provide money to Ukraine so that they could fight back against Putin. And if we lose in Ukraine, we're facing threats to the West, not just there, but with Hamas, with Iran, with China and Taiwan. If we show this sort of weakness, it exposes the whole underbelly of the Western alliance.
Well, yeah, I don't accept that argument at all. I hear it a lot. Ukraine's problem is not money. It's not like, wow, if only the U.S. had given that $60 billion in September when it was first offered by President Biden, then it would be different on the battlefield. We had given, along with Europe, $200 billion in the first 18 months of the war, thousands upon thousands of armored vehicles, millions of shells of artillery, and it made no difference on the ground. To suggest now that at the 2-year mark, a few more dollars is going to make a difference does not square with what's actually happened on the ground. That's why I say the ground truth reality is there is no path to military victory. So to give more money and more shells, it keeps alive hope in some that they can win when actually they're not going to. All that will do is make more money go up. At some point, even if people don't like it, if the military path is not there for a victory, it's foolish to keep trying to go down it anyway, because you talk about something that'll harm our interest and make China and some of them more bolden. If they see us taking a foolish path that harms our own interest, then they're more likely to do something than if we take a rational path and say, let's close this war off as soon as we can so that we can prepare ourselves better for any potential other fights.
But, Colonel, at the beginning of this war, everybody said Ukraine would be rolled over within a fortnight. All the military advice was that Ukraine would just lose and would fold against the Russian power. With weapons provided by the UK and the US, Ukraine's done amazing things. Isn't it right that we carry on helping them?
Yes, I completely agree that's the case. Most people, and I'm talking about, United States, Great Britain, even many in Kiev thought that was going to happen. But the two things happened. One, we underestimated how willing the Ukraine side was to fight, and we overestimated how effective that Russia would be with their mechanized forces. That was exposed and burned away by those myths, especially in 2022 in the fall when Ukraine retook the Kherson area, when they took the Kharkiv area and rolled them back a long ways. But Russia learned from that. And here's what's crucial to understand. This is no longer 2022. So Russia's armament industries are now increasing. Ukraine sides are decreasing because their air power is not enough to keep those Russian missiles from knocking out all their factories and stuff. Ukraine is running out of men. It's not money they need, it's men, and they're running out of it. Russia has millions more military-age men to have. They have an undisturbed military industrial capacity. And all of those things say that over time, if this is an attrition war, Russia will eventually win that. You just can't roll back those fundamentals.
Okay. All right. Colonel, one final thought on Tucker Carlson. At the end of the Second World War, Lord Haw, the propagandist for Hitler, was hanged as a traitor. Do you think that Carlson is a traitor by providing propaganda for the enemy?
Well, that's in the eye of the beholder. There's many people, and I'm certainly on him. I don't think it's propaganda. He's actually asking him questions and listening to what he has to say. So, again, going back to the Sun Tzu, you have to listen to your oppositions. Now, many people in the U.S. are already calling Tucker Carlson a traitor. I think that's an unfair statement because we're supposed to be free in democratic countries, and freedom of speech is supposed to be one of them. I think that people want to get rid of that speech if they don't like it, and I don't think that's part of democracy. So I don't view it that way at all.
All right. Thank you very much. Very interesting conversation. Very grateful you joined us at GBN America this afternoon. Thank you.
I appreciate your time. Thanks for having me.